I'm impressed every time I pick one up and think, how would I ever like read the schematic and then I actually get into it? I'm like, oh, okay, so there's actually, they tell you how to do it. Like, it's like a nice recipe. And so, except you're not baking a cake, you know.
Little
Itty bitty nano cakes, maybe.
What are they?
So they're polyaminoamines, so they're, I was gonna make a joke about them being organic, because they're, so they're not synthetic, so sometimes nanoparticles are made of gold or things, but sometimes they're made of polyethylene glycol, and this is like, it's just like OHs and carbons, and it stays, and they're actually excreted intact, so they're, you know, the body doesn't hate it too much, and it doesn't, and when it's broken down, it doesn't create any toxic compounds, it's pretty chill.
So they're indigestible?
They are digestible, but they take a while, and they usually get excreted pretty those that do not get taken up into a cell get excreted pretty quickly within about 12 hours. So, and they get excreted through the kidneys intact. So that which is not used.
So your last slide had an attribution to, I guess, the Nanotechnology Center at Hopkins. So if you're specifying directly for a third-party source for this, what is that Center of Nanoparticle Technology doing?
So we do things like figuring out what linkers to put on the end of these dendrimers, and there's actually some work going on with some of the chemists trying to figure out new nanoparticles that we can devise. So not using those, but trying to figure out new ones. Figuring out how to attach the compounds to the dendrimer, which is a feat in and of itself a lot of times. Figuring out what linker you need in order to keep it intact on the dendrimer before it gets to the cell. And doesn't get cleaved off of the dendrimer and metabolized. Figuring out what exactly you want to put on it, and that's a lot of what I do is, you know, from the neuroscience end, is figuring out what compounds we should be putting on dendrimers and how to make them, you know, make them most effective. Currently working on like redosing parameters, like how frequently we give them and have it still be effective.
But you're currently, like, the state of research is with animals, right?
So we're actually we are moving towards clinical trials, and there's some conversations, you know, going on, starting to work towards, so one of the women that I work for works in rare diseases, so she's a critical care medicine specialist, and she is very concerned with diseases, orphan diseases like adrenoleukodystrophy. So looking at, and so those have no cure and have no treatments, so targeting those first and trying to see if we can do clinical trials there.
What's the size limitation on what you can couple to the dendrimer? I mean, can you put proteins on there, or
no,
still
they have to be small.
Small.
Yeah, they have to be small, and that's the one limitation. And the nanoparticles we can tailor. So depending on how much you branch out, so because they're building blocks, and like with every additional ring that you create, it gets, you know, bigger and bigger. We don't really want to go above 8 to 10 nanometers, otherwise you start to get problems with permeability into the brain. But so that's the other thing, is that if we did get it large enough to put larger molecules on, we would then have even more trouble, you know, utilizing it. You know, what we like about it, it would no longer exist, those properties.
So you can tag it with something that's not otherwise able to get into the brain?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, and that's actually one of the projects I'm working on right now. There are other drugs that we like to target the microglia with. So the microglia produce glutamate, and sometimes too fast. And there are drugs that can inhibit that, but they do not cross the blood-brain barrier. And we can actually put this drug on the dendrimer, and it will. What we're starting to see is that it will cross, and it will be taken up by microglia. But if you give it freely, it won't make it in.
I didn't understand anything you said, but it sounds like these people did.
Well, that's not good. I would like you to understand it as well.
I went to public school in Texas. I'm gonna leave it there.
I went to Jacksonville, Texas.
I don't know how we got out. It's so hot.
So, using the nanoparticles, would you end up treating during development of the disease, or can you treat it like after?
Well, that's a great question, and that's something that I feel like I'm doing all of this at once.
Sorry.
No, it's one of those things that we're interested in, because you have to work with the clinical presentation of the disease to some extent, and that's the great part about working with a lot of the MDs, because they have that. You know, we have these great grand ideas of like how we're going to cure disease, and they're like, yeah, but that doesn't work. Like, you can't. No Parkinson's patient is going to come into your clinic without any motor symptoms. And by the time a Parkinson's patient comes in with motor symptoms, the amount of dopamine cells lost is you are way past the point of return. So we have to get not only better at treating it, but we have to get better at finding it sooner. So some people we're trying to see if we can use, so other things we can put on dendrimers are like targeting ligands or radioactive compounds, so we could use it for like PET imaging, things like that. So that's something that we're also interested in doing and maybe being able to use it as a diagnostic tool as well. So we do it all. It's, they keep us busy. But yeah, so that's part of the problem is that what the dendrimers are really most effective in, the sicker the better is usually, so we get the most uptake of dendrimers in the sickest of animals that we test. So trying to figure out how to increase that uptake in less sick animals, or, so we can start tweaking how to be effective is something that we're currently tackling as well.
Can you name me 3 diseases or ailments that your treatment will, your research will treat?
Cerebral palsy, Parkinson's, and adrenoleukodystrophy.
Ooh, what's that?
Adrenoleukodystrophy is a problem with digestion of long-chain fatty acids in the brain, and so it's a rare disease. It affects children. It can affect adults, but you can develop a cerebral form of it, and once you get cerebral, the prognosis is about 2 to 3 years of life. So it's a pretty quick deceleration, and it's something that at Kennedy Krieger they see a lot of. They have specialists there. So that's one of the nice things about Kennedy Krieger is that they have specialists in a lot of these rare diseases. So we get, things that are very rare. You still get to see 10, 12 patients a year with it. So that's one of the cool things that we have. So those are on our radar right now. But we have like stroke models going on. Sleep fragmentation is one thing that we're really interested in understanding more of, and Sarah's been doing really cool work with that. And I'm trying to get her to let me inject dendrimers into her rabbits someday.
Maybe they'll high five.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we can develop a nanoparticle that will make them high five. That would, I would truly feel like that is the biggest accomplishment I could ever have inside. But so it's very overarching and exciting and overwhelming all at the same time.
Yeah.
I hate to ask all of the question, but why would you use these dendrimers as opposed to the gold nanoparticles? The gold nanoparticles actually be a lot larger and carry larger drugs and still be uptook. Is it just the availability? Is it the cheapness of it?
Well, the gold is not tolerated as well by the body. So you're right, they do have pros and they could be useful. It's not that they're not useful, but we appreciate the low toxicity and the ability to have it be as small as they are because we want to be able to penetrate the brain very well and you need something small to do that. So for our uses, it seems to be the best, but in other cases, the gold, like those will probably be a better fit for other questions.
I have another question. Crowdfunded equity deals, WTF? Is that a real thing? Has there been success stories with that?
Well, they changed the law on May 16th of 2016 last year, so that everybody in the room could invest in equity deals. Before you had to be Uber, you had to have $200,000 as an individual or $300,000 as a joint couple, and have $1 million in assets outside of your home in order to invest in these equity deals, or to be a shark on Shark Tank. So nowadays it's called Title III of the Jobs Act. I'm going to talk very slowly, little words from the finance world. Title III of the Jobs Act, which allows everybody, regardless of income, to invest in equity deals on FINRA, Financial Regulatory Agency approved crowdfunding portals. It's a website that has some regulatory stuff backed in on the back end. Basically, it's for anti-money laundering and know your customer checks, so you're not supporting Al Qaeda either directly or incidentally. And so now if you have a business, or if you're creating cures for diseases whose names I can't pronounce, it's do you want to invest in this business that's going to cure X, Y, and Z? That's how I look at it from a public health perspective, because as I talk to people in the public health field, I'm secretly a public health groupie. I'm frustrated by the lack of funding for everything.
We all are.
Right? and so it's like they beat me to death with data, and I'm like, I don't really give a fuck about the data. Give me some of your passion. Give me some of your passion, and let's translate that into action. Because particularly with the new administration, global warming doesn't exist, smog is not actually a thing,
No vaccines.
no vaccines. And so where is your funding gonna go to for, I consider all this shit like Star Trek technology. I'm super excited when someone invents a wand that tells me exactly what's wrong with me. Like, I wanna invest in that thing. And so if you don't start looking for alternative, innovative funding mechanisms and way to fund your research, you could literally have a 4, God forbid, 8-year period where you don't get any money. And all the things that you want to do, it's not gonna just dry up. It's gone. And so looking at equity-based crowdfunding is a different way to say, this happened because I was in Louisiana at LSU with one of my asshole, not you, but one of my asshole investor friends. And we were at a research park and the president was telling us about breast milk research. So your baby, this is Louisiana, the top 5 killers are like everything related to obesity, diabetes, hypertension, all that good stuff. And so the CEO was telling us how in Louisiana, mothers, they eat fried chicken, shit, and grease. Some combination thereof. And when you have a baby and the mom eats fried chicken, shit, and grease, the baby gets a liquid diet of fried chicken, shit, and grease. But they don't have the data to explain why they need to spend more money on diet, improving mothers' diets. Why? Because no one wants to invest in breast milk research. And I was like, huh. This seems like a really good, easy thing that you can get people behind. Because it's like, yes, if you eat fried chicken, shit, and grease, this is what happens to your kids. Your kids are born obese, and by the time they're 5, they have all other kind of problems. And so looking at it from a public health perspective, there are things that people in the academy or people in your field, they will fund, they will get behind, they will actually think that's a good idea. I'm willing to invest, even if it's just a crapshoot, I'm willing to invest X, Y, or Z in it.
So I got a question, but crowdfunding, I mean, you're talking about equity, you're talking of the investor is expecting a return or hoping for a return on their investment.
Is the right word.
Hoping, yes, okay. So, but with basic research or things in the public health realm, maybe actually it's more abstract and basic research where we don't know what the return is going to be.
You don't, and so part of the
So what kind of crowdfunding models can apply to funding basic research that's not really investing in a company or looking for a return or
that's
or at least
one
a
of the,
return that can be monetized?
that's what we're looking at, because on the crowdsourcing side of things, NASA does great, amazing stuff with crowdsourcing. They're like, hey, let's map this part of the sky. And they'll literally get 200,000 or 300,000 people who volunteer to map the sky. And so there's things that in public health and science that you can actually do that. That's what we're exploring to see where can we get a community involved, and about 700 people, that's interested in this line of work, this thought process. And so that's a tough one, because sometimes, I look at it from an investor perspective. If it might not give me any return now, if it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road, how much is that investment worth? And so, but for everyone else, you might have that, you have that head, heart, feet. They know it, they feel it, they do it. And so that's what we're looking at to explore. Sure.
So the thing is you're talking about, going to researchers and saying, all right, put some of your budget into another researcher's research and get equity in that. That just feels really funky from the way research is done. The research it's mine, it's my organization's, it's the person I work for's, it's their idea that I worked on, my name's on that paper. How is that going to work if there's 700 individuals putting in $100 of their budget to help somebody else's project? While it's noble, it just like that feels really funky.
So it's a good point. Part of the conversation I was having at GW, 56% of a federal grant goes to the university. I was like, what? I'm in the wrong business. Or more, someone else said,
Yeah.
Yeah.
more.
right?
Yeah.
I was like, so for every, I was just floored that that's how much, that's just straight pimping as far as I'm concerned. Wow. And I was like, if I could lend you money and get a 50, and charge you 56% interest, it'd be amazing. And so this is part of this, there's some money to be made, and it's not even a lie, it's vicious, it's ridiculous. But it's looking for that alternative. And when I asked Dr. Liz Smith, right?
Correct.
Dr. Liz Smith, what diseases the dendrimers treated or could be used to treat, because later I want to explain this to someone, like they went to public school in Texas. And part of that is how you engage not just your local community, but the layman, who they get their, whether it's Fox News or the Drudge Report, that's where they get their news from. We do something, we have Star Trek technology that helps cure X, Y, or Z or treat X, Y, or Z. It's telling your story in a compelling way where it's less of the truth and more of the story, as I like to say, where you get people involved and have them in heartbeat. So they're like, I am supporting this, not because I understand it or know it, because I believe in it.
So what about when, and I know every scientist here can think about this, we already have a problem with, journalists jumping on something that, we don't have enough research on, that was only one paper,
Yeah.
they make a big claim, and then it turns out, well, no, chocolate isn't really good for you, something like that. But what would you do when people are investing in your work, but it is internet, it's really intermental. You're studying something for 5 years, and then you might study something for 5 more years, and it turns out
To us is a huge
Yes.
jump in knowledge. I feel like to the general public, they're like,
it's so
that's not a
small.
cure.
Right.
give me
Yeah.
a cure. And you're like, but look how far we've come. And they're like, that's not a cure.
Right, and it's also, it can derail into, like you could be on one goal and, it's a dead end or it's just not gonna go anywhere, and you have to go somewhere else. And how do you, don't, leave people feeling like, why did I just put money in that when nothing is coming out of it? It's been 5 years.
I just want to hop on that.
Yeah.
It's like negative data, finding out that your hypothesis is not true, that still has a huge amount of value to science and advancing the literature, and it's underrepresented in scientific literature. And
Talk about waste of money.
yeah,
Negative data is so,
but that's not going to get academic investment. Like, no one's going to be excited to find out that your idea didn't work.
yes.
So the failure rate,
Yeah.
It's not gonna work.
The failure rate is immense. Even just at the, undergraduate level, doing research for an undergraduate PI.
I feel like that would be.
We're working on 9 different projects under the same name because 8 of them are not going to turn. 8 of them are just going to be, that's too difficult at our money range, at our skill range, that thing, it just turns into something, all right, we're going to have to send that to PhDs to research because we don't know. And so much money goes into that, but it's not, I don't know.
We definitely have to somehow buffer, some really smart way of making sure people don't feel like we're totally letting them down. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
when the young lady was talking about, I forgot your name, Sarah, right? I love Sarah's passion. She was like, look at this, and she was showing how it really got interacted. I was like, oh, that's really impressive. From an investor perspective, I was in Ireland last week. That's where our office is based, and we're having a conversation with some Chinese investors. It's a funny story. They just want visas, so they'll dump $50,000 into a business. They don't care if it works or not. So we lined up some business for them, and they're like, boom, bing, 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 and they just want a visa. Because for our investment strategy, 4.5% of our portfolio generates 96% of returns. That's it. 1 in 20 is a successful investment. We understand most of our investments are going to die on the vine. You hear the guys on Wall Street talking about, oh, I'm so smart, I'm so this, they're all full of shit. They're all gambling and betting with your money from your 401k, just like everybody else. And so there is failure that will happen in research. Be transparent, be honest, and just tell people this is hard.
It's not really failure, it's still valuable.
And so this is where scientists, when you have that passion, you care so much about something, that you need somebody like myself who can help you tell a little bit more of the story and less of the truth. To help the lay people who went to public school like myself say, oh, this is valuable, we get it, we didn't get to the moon in one shot. Sometimes the whole capsule goes up in flame. And that's because you're so, I think that researchers in particular, they're so emotionally committed and invested in what they're researching. I used to work at the health department in DC, and I would say, oh, we're gonna have to let some babies die. And people would get so upset. And I was like, it's a matter of triage. We only have X number of resources, and we have to do that. Why? And so for scientists, you're just so emotionally attached to your work that when you meet a business person who comes in and they're like, you want to do what to my research? I saw on Time Magazine the last week's article about Botox, which is now prescribed for everything under the sun. It has nothing to do with its actual original purpose. They've gone from what is that? Just for cosmetic injections to sleep. To help you sleep, which I thought was a brilliant marketing. So there's some things that we're going to work out. Tiffany Gray, when she gets back from California, she posted a little something on Medium talking about it. We've been talking about it. My company's going to give her a crowdfunding platform to give it a go, to see from a perspective, because I think it can be done from a business side, where her community and the people in her field, she does child and maternal health. It's a good story to tell, where we crowdfund for her from an equity perspective. It may crash and burn, and it might just be a hot, glorious mess. And I'll be there to tell a little bit more of the story, and as well as some of the truth as well.
Okay, so I think that's a great idea. I just had one question in terms of like regulation. So part of the process for getting funding is that people check to make sure your research is not just totally crazy, going to kill people. So do you like if you get
Our new FDA head said that wasn't necessary. No, I'm not even joking. It's like for real though. He's like, clinical trials are stupid. Straight to market.
But like, is that part of the, so if you have people just being able to fund and give money, is that also incorporated in the idea?
So one of the benefits of crowdfunding is it's called the wisdom of the crowd. I have a jar of jelly beans. Everybody guesses how many jelly beans are in here. They're pretty accurate. And so when we're talking about polymer chain reactions or dendrimers, right? We're talking about dendrimers. If someone posts something that they found a great new way to create dendrimers and they want to monetize this, Dr. Liz is gonna jump on and be like, that's bullshit, right? Then the other 300 scientists in the US who know about this, they're also gonna chime in, because part of the regulatory requirements is that you have community input, is that people can actually talk about it. And if you look at Reddit and Wiki, people, if they're in that community and they start looking at it, you have all those eyes on it, it works better than blockchain for guaranteeing, like, is this a real thing? Are they a real scientist? Oh, Samson, he's burned us in the past. And so that's one of the checks and balances that is required. Scientists and other people in the field who know about it chime in to say, is this real or is this not real?
But there are cases where this doesn't work out, right? Like one example is the vaccine linked to autism thing. It's like many people leave it because they have emotional attachment or like fear for their child. And there are some prominent spokespeople that get more play than necessarily a scientist who's done research on this thing. So it's like your jelly bean jar analogy isn't exactly right in this case, because like there's very specialized knowledge. It's like we are looking at this jar of jelly beans, other people hear about this jar of jelly beans, or they see a picture of this jar of jelly beans and they're just trying to guess at how many are in that jar. Whereas scientists who work in this field are actually looking at it, taking out the jelly beans, and measure things. And it's sometimes hard to tell the truth when the story is not compelling.
That's why I tell more of the story.
I would say that this election kind of poses the perfect challenge to that idea that the crowd always
I
will
think the crowd
find
voted
the truth
the right way.
because
The electoral college voted the
I
other
think
way.
that like there was a lot of fake news that was believed by large groups of people because there was a lot of funding behind it or because there were louder voices promoting it.
Mhm.
So I don't know, I just, it feels like crowdthink isn't always gonna find the truth of what's gonna work, or, I don't know, how would you respond to that?
I was thinking the same thing when you were saying, like, tell less of the truth and more of the story. I was like, no. We're already doing that, and I get annoyed that we just follow the, like, bully loud person, like, making a lot of, like, compelling, like, emotional arguments when we should think about the truth.
Well, I was saying to Walter here, when I was listening to you, and it does take offense, but it sounded a little bit like how to raise money for a film in Hollywood. Okay, that style works good for certain things. So how would you sort of, as to your comment, kind of, you know, not let it get it to bite you in the backside at some point?
So I think that part of it, as an anthropologist, I love this. I love studying culture and having people's input because my colleague Tiffany, she studies smoking cessations for LGBTQ, right? And I buy Philip Morris stock because Philip Morris is killing it in Asia. It is ridiculous. Philip Morris is a tobacco company. Because part of you guys as scientists, you go up against marketers and advertisers. And it's like, oh, it's sort of tough. Because where you're looking for that empirical quantitative data, I'm pulling on heartstrings. That's it. I don't actually need to prove anything. And so as you toe that line, it's great that you know that it's there, and then you look into yourself and look inside yourself and say, okay, where am I at on this line, and is it going to help me get to my goal? Because you can have a good-hearted goal, because I'm telling you, at the end of the day, when you go up against some of the sociopaths from finance who are only concerned about a metric, they don't really care how they get there. I feel like scientists, they care how you get there. And so it falls back to you to be that voice of reason and to speak up and say, hey, that's not true. This is an actual fact. How do you do that at a national level?
Along that path, there may be some damages and consequences done. If we're talking about investigating diseases or things like that, you know, or trying to commercialize something that's going to be a treatment or cure. And that sort of cavalier thing of the FDA is going to let stuff just, you know, you can't be cavalier. That's, you know, that's my take.
I encourage all the scientists, don't be cavalier and make sure you do your best to check my brethren, even myself, because when we're having boardroom meetings, we're typically talking about a stock price, not necessarily about the liable impact along to hit that metric.
But I think the point you were trying to make, to me it seems that scientists are generally not good at selling their science. And, you know, telling a little more of the story and less of the truth may not necessarily try to be misleading, but to be compelling more is something that I think we could all benefit from. And I know that that's something I try and work on, because in order to get funding, either, you know, through NIH or through other mechanisms, we need to be able to tell a compelling story, and still truthful, but a compelling story. Otherwise, you know, it's great that you want to do this random thing, but if nobody cares about it, they're not gonna.
Your truthiness index.
I don't think scientists are bad at telling their story. I think the audience needs to change, and that's like what you guys are doing. Like, you can't keep going to the same you know, resources. They're not as good as they used to be, or there's not as much. So, you know, yeah. So somewhere in what you're saying is more answers to go outside into a new audience. I think you guys are telling good stories. I'm believing them.
You don't know a lot of our colleagues that decided that shied away from this event. Like, you know, we're more like, I know from our lab, we're the more outgoing of the group, and if you had put some of my colleagues up
But-
here.
But don't most scientists spend time trying to at least write to an audience to get money?
Most of the
Isn't that how
time
you-
you're
They're
writing,
they're
you're
writing
writing
to
to
a
a
scientific audience.
Right, so
I
the
think-
audience needs to,
So when
Change.
I
What
Like,
you're really
yes.
trying to say, like, correct me if I'm wrong up here, but the idea is, we're all, we struggled with, I didn't even have to do it. Taking this super scientific, it's almost like another language, and boiling it back down to something simple is really hard to do, and it's something not all of us are really good at. And normally we're writing to other scientists, so when we make these compelling arguments, we put in these graphs and we put in these data. And the idea is that we need to get better at talking to the public, and I think some of it's for funding, and I also think, if I hear everyone right, it's also just the general public has these ideas about research because of things like the media taking that one quote at the end of, this could one day lead to a cure for Alzheimer's, and then being like, they did it! And you're like, dang, that's not what I said.
So, or using more addictive than cocaine.
Yeah, that's not quite right. And so it hurts us to hear, like, don't tell the truth, because we hear those kind of catchphrases and it kills us a little bit because that's not what we were trying to say. But at the same time, like, we need to get better at learning to get rid of that jargon and learning to put in a little bit more passion and say, like, no, I didn't find the cure for Alzheimer's. But what you don't understand is the cure for Alzheimer's is in our reach if we do these steps. They sound small, but they're gonna be huge. Like, and finding those ways of convincing, like, I personally study like protein level interactions, and it doesn't directly translate to a disease. It can implement a lot, and if I learn enough about it, we can do things with it, but it's like 5-10 steps away from that, right? But it's convincing the general public in a passionate way instead of saying, like, you know, all this jargon like circa and small ingredient, and you're like, what is this? Finding a way to kind of start telling them this is important research, even if you don't understand all the words, like it's important. Don't I think we're worried a little bit that it sounds like you want like us to overstretch and be like,
Oversell.
yeah, which like, I don't know if that's what you're trying to tell me or not, but that's what
Simplify
it
it.
feels like.
It's because I'm a mentor and a coach at Startup Weekend. It's for people, coding guys. They have apps and all this good technology, and they're super genius bright until they have to explain their idea, right? And so I spend most of the time, I tell them, I'm from Texas. I grew up on a farm. Explain it to me so I can understand it, and go next door and tell one of the good old boys that are the bros from the fraternities of what you're doing so we can get you some money. And so when I love your presentation. This audience gets it, right? They're asking you questions, they're following it. But the moment we leave this environment and go elsewhere, I'd be struggling a little bit to explain what you ladies are doing and gentlemen are doing from a science perspective to a potential layperson. They don't even need to be an investor, just a regular person off the street. And so as you think of the science, break it down to as simple as you can get it. Because like for me, when I talk about crowdfunding, I use a church analogy. We get it. From a technology perspective, what we do is we connect businesses that need money with investors who have it to give. That's it.
So, I think there's a kind of a disconnect here between all of us. You know, a lot of folks are talking about the general public. You're talking about businesses. So the way businesses used to do this, it wasn't necessarily crowdfunding. The businesses went to a university and they said, we want to fund X research because we're going to own it once it's done. When that PI leaves, it's ours. Or the school holds a piece of it, a really tiny piece of it. So this is a lot of the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that come up on the market. Some poor 100 PhD students, or they worked on it, and it's gone. It's not theirs anymore. And so that model is really kind of gross anymore. It's gotten really destructive and really money grubbing. And so I don't know that your model is going to be any different. I think you're just making them you're going to make researchers targets for those kind of people, as opposed to actually making research better. You're just going to increase the surface area for attack.
There's
I have an anecdote. Have you heard of experiment.com?
Yeah.
So that is exactly what you're talking about. And it's open to the general public. So it's not researchers paying other researchers to do research. It's anyone. Like if somebody wants to find, for example, open source insulin is one that's really interesting because insulin has been tied up in patents for so long that people can't afford insulin. And it's crazy. It was government funded, it was funded by our taxes, and then a corporation picks it up and owns it, and people can't afford a cure. So that is crazy. But I feel like experiment.com is addressing these issues in an interesting way because they have, so I think they have a panel of scientists that have to approve of your project before it's up there. So you don't get people who are just like, I have this idea and I think it's gonna be great and I know how to pitch it and I have like this team of video people who is gonna make a really compelling video, but I don't even know how to do it, you know. So I think there are solutions that you can find to prevent fake cures or just collecting money for, like you said, for Al-Qaeda or some other organization.
What's your name again?
Ryan.
So Ryan is part of the crowd, right? So he's doing his due diligence. That's awesome, Ryan. And that's part of that knowledge I'm working on. And yes, you're right. It opens up researchers to be more of a target for predatory financiers, right? Welcome to the whatever century this happens to be. Because I don't know anyone who's not. Anyone go to school and spend less than $100,000 on tuition? Wow.
She doesn't go. Yeah.
Well, the Maryland University system is abnormal in certain ways.
So part of the only thing I want you to take away from my perspective is you're scientists. At least now you know that this thing exists. Go do some research on it. Say, Samson, you're full of shit. Samson, you might be half partially full of shit. All right, I want to talk to you some more about how this could work. Because if you don't start the conversation, you're still going to be underfunded in 3 months. And people are done.
Yeah, we should probably move on to some
Yes,
other questions.
some extra science.
But only because I don't want to keep you guys here all night, so let's,
I got a question for Brian.
Yes.
So your, what was it, TMR?
Yes.
Okay. So that was auditory?
Yes.
Why did you choose auditory?
Primarily so that it was less likely to wake up participants. I know there have been past studies, I believe, at Northwestern using various sensory stimulation, but they found auditory to be the easiest because actually looking at the brain's threshold of which stimulus can you ramp up the highest before they actually wake up, auditory is the highest. So it's much easier to get a stimulation within the brain.
So the other thing is, and so you were looking at motor skills.
Yes.
What about like cognitive skills, like recall and things like that?
Yeah, so that intervention, the targeted memory reactivation, has been almost, I'd say 90% of the literature is in cognitive learning, using that declarative learning, so word lists, learning a new language, learning a piece of music, things like that. So what we're trying to do is bridge that into the motor realm as well.
So, okay, so I'm not familiar with that. I should be because I teach, and I'm just thinking that's, so associative learning of cognitive skills with auditory can enhance recall later on.
Yes.
So, have you ever heard of clicker training?
Well, no, so I kind of have the
Oh,
same
yeah, for
questions.
dogs, yeah.
A few years ago, I was like trying to learn more, like how can you do that when you're sleeping, right? So I was thinking like if you play audio tapes of foreign languages,
Okay.
it'll somehow, you'll absorb it, right? And that's BS, basically. But what you're using is Neanderthal. So the thing of it, so what you're using is, like you're saying, is this audio reinforcement mechanism of lobbying response. But the thing is, when you take away that audio signaling, is your idea is that the, I guess, re-impression in the neural system of that motor skill is going to be persistent without that reinforcement at some point? In other words, like this is a crutch, and eventually that audio crutch goes away, but the motor, I don't know what would be the
Something
correct
that
word
should
for
be
the
carry
impression.
over.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Or
so
you always have to do that now. In other words, you always, like, these people would go to sleep and they would play a tape or something like that, or however it worked, because I'm sorry, my age, again, would reinforce that.
So I can't say for certain because no one's done a longitudinal study on it, but you know, based on principles and concepts of how the brain learns, the hypothesis, I guess, would be that you would only have to listen to the tape for maybe 2 weeks or something. Not every night, maybe every other night. Because there was a really cool study doing this in mice, finding that playing the sounds during one night or one day of sleep in the mouse would reverberate even the next night. So it had a carryover effect to one more night. But the way that the brain works is that we're trying to reshape the brain very fast in a very acute manner so that it does generalize down the road. When someone learns any motor skill, you start out relying a lot more on sensory information than someone who's a master at the skill. So usually if you're learning to play tennis or something, you rely a lot more on feedback from your instructor and things like that. But then you don't need the feedback going on because you internalize the motor movement so much that you don't even pay attention anymore. So that's kind of the idea as well, is that this feedback is giving you the sensory feedback you need to replay it in the brain during sleep. But then after a few weeks of doing it, that idea of being able to walk again gets stuck in the brain so that it doesn't go away.
So the follow-up question I had is, like you said, there's no longitudinal study, and you also indicated, I think that your sample size so far is rather small. Is that because you're kind of doing this on the side? It's not like a formal study?
Well, in terms of my dissertation, this was my first aim. So I have 3 aims. So I'm going to be pushing this along the larger samples and then patient populations as well. So this was more of a proof of concept type of work I was just showing. Yeah.
So with your targeted reactivation of the whatever memory trace, does it disrupt consolidation of other memories? Because I think in one of your background slides you show like you learn a behavior, but if you're learning something else, it might degrade that consolidation.
Sure.
I was wondering the same thing. Were you suggesting that it's like better to learn at night? That's kind of like what I took from it, but maybe you didn't say that at all. It's like maybe it's better to like practice something before sleep and then go to sleep and consolidate.
So then there were 2 parts to the question, I guess, from that. So I'll answer the second part. I'll answer the second part first. So yes, there have been many studies to show that if you try to learn something before you go to sleep, it's retained to a higher effect than if you were to learn it in the morning and then have 8 hours of whatever you do and then go to sleep.
That explains high school math.
So yeah, that concept has been shown in cognitive and motor skills. And then the first part of your question, are we disrupting other memories that are being consolidated? So also again, I can't say that for certain, but already when someone is asleep, this has been shown by numerous studies. Whatever the person is most interested in are the memory and neuronal traces that are going to be replayed. So what we're doing is we're telling the brain, this is the important thing that you need to replay. So yeah, you could also probably make the argument that there are other things that won't be replayed as much. But when I'm doing this, I don't do it throughout the entire night. It was maybe, each person had like 45 to 80 minutes of that total, and that's throughout an entire night of sleep. So the idea then would be, so maybe for that one period where we're biasing the brain's replay a bit, but then it might take over in other parts and renormalize, but I can't say that for certain.
So tomorrow I should tell myself I really care about something, read about it while I'm listening to a song,
nap every 45 minutes and then.
Your life.
When I'm sleeping, I'm learning, damn it.
I mean, you could give it a shot. I would say that the takeaway for the general public here is that you know, I'm not yeah, I would
Not
just say,
advocating for this.
I would say that what I'm doing, remember, it's one sound, so it's like a beep. And I made the beeps novelly, so they don't associate them with anything else they know. So I mean, it sounds like a spaceship laser or something, some crazy noise I made. And it's just like a 500 millisecond burst. So I think maybe if you were to play a song ongoing, you'd probably have habituation occurring in the brain. Because usually if you play auditory stimulus,
You're gonna mind control us, is that what you just said?
eventually.
No. What he just said is if the government uses the same sound to mind control you, you get used to it and you stop being mind controlled.
No, the idea is if you play an auditory stimulus more than once, like every 5 seconds, the brain stops responding to it. So if you were to play a song that's a little bit too fast, or like if you sleep with a fan, you know, it's not making you get aroused all the time because the fan has such a fast RPM rate that it actually decreases the brain activity.
I am off the rails by fans.
I'm trying to think what my question was.
So you were saying like so there's duration, frequency, and is there anything that's tied to the where you are in sleep? It sounded like it's not, so you're not really monitoring where a person is in their sleep cycle. It doesn't matter apparently, right?
No, it does. So
There
have been studies playing this at different stages of sleep to see, you know, just throwing it at the wall, you know, what works best. What's been found is that during non-REM sleep seems to work. Initially, the research was pointing towards stage 3 sleep, or as she was saying in the beginning, the very deep sleep. But the research is showing that it could be in any stage 2 or stage 3 non-REM sleep. And the idea about doing it during non-REM sleep is the brain activity is, well, it's obviously different than during REM sleep, but gene expression actually is very minimal during non-REM sleep as compared to during REM sleep. There's a lot more gene expression which does occur. So the idea being that you're replaying these synapses during non-REM sleep with the thought that 30 minutes later, those activity-dependent genes are now getting kicked in during REM sleep.
Yeah.
But I haven't shown an experiment. That's the hypothesis.
It's a good story.
We'll take for it.
I have a question for my
Yes.
sleep lovers. I don't know if I can get it whittled down and maybe appropriately, maybe in your research you have seen things along this line. But comparing, like I would say more like children and also traumatic brain injuries in regulated sleep patterns versus sleep supported environments. So in particular, like traumatic brain injuries, when you get to a skilled nursing point, which is where I work, skilled nursing, you see that a lot of times the nursing staff wants and the caregivers want to see them up for progressively more longer periods of time, and there may be other compounding side effects or other health complications if they're, you know, maybe in bed too much, or they're saying not during those wake cycles, but sleep supporting the relearning and the regeneration. I was kind of just wondering what you saw maybe in your research, again, in the regulated sleep patterning versus sleep supported environment where you're sleeping when the body tells you to rest and you're awake when the body tells you to wake.
So one of my mentors actually she is an anesthesiologist in the pediatric ICU. She's in charge of like pick you up, I think. And they actually are very involved in regulating sleep because it's shown that if kids are in the ICU for a long period of time, their ability to enter like restorative non-REM sleep is like completely out of whack. It's everywhere, it's all over the place, and it's not good for them. And they're actually seeing that the children, if you put them into those regulated sleep environments and get them up and moving more often, even though it seems cool sometimes when they're sick, especially with traumatic brain injuries or anything else, that getting them up and moving actually helps them sleep more and helps them recover more better. It helps them recover more quickly than just letting them sleep when the body wants them to sleep, especially in a lot of environments in intensive care units where there's lights and beeping all the time. Like, it's just not good. So trying to move towards a more regulated environment is probably a better thing to do.
And also, I would also add in that when you look at a stroke or brain injury population, there's a very large magnitude of them that have sleep apnea. And kind of going back to her presentation, she talked about the chicken or the egg. Do these kids have sleep disorders before these symptoms, or the symptoms causing the sleep disorders? It's sort of the same with stroke. If you go in an ICU, so right after a stroke, about 80% of people in there who have had a stroke also have sleep apnea. So we don't know if the sleep apnea is causing the stroke or if the stroke is causing the sleep apnea. There's logic behind both and research behind both. But what I would say then to the skilled nursing side of it, if that sleep apnea is progressing over and over for months, by the time they get to the skilled nursing facility, they're just so tired all the time from the sleep apnea, causing them to have such terrible sleep that it's really going to mess up their circadian rhythm.
So I've remembered my question now.
Oh, good.
There were studies done where if you are doing some sort of task, whether it's physical or mental, and you do a mental task of another type at the same time, so you learn a language while you are learning math, there is it's not a really significant, but there's an increase in your learning of the two of them. Is there anything of that kind where instead of a beep, you do some math in your head? And maybe, I don't know how it would occur for sleep.
I could play an audio saying 4 times 4.
Or foreign languages, because the tapes were always learn foreign languages, you sleep.
It doesn't work.
I'm here to debunk that story. But it would be very interesting to mix the two ideas.
Sure. So you're getting at the dual task learning paradigms. There are a lot of those. Having a dual, even in rehabilitation and motor learning and things. But I'm not sure really how I would equate it to sort of the sleep learning paradigms. But I know what you're getting at. And also too, I should comment that in terms of those language tapes, yes, obviously they didn't work in the past, but I have read some studies where if you just play one word, so let's say you have a list of 20 words you want to learn in German, and instead of playing a tape of just someone talking in German, you do what I did, and instead of having this beep, it's just the German word, and it's just played once, and it's very very quick and subtle like that. The studies have shown that does influence learning, but not the long narrative type tape where there's a man talking to you in
If you
French.
need to learn a list of words, you put one word on one night, the second one.
Well, what about the really long German words?
I don't know.
The short German words?
Oh, that's right.
I'm pretty sure the most cited study I'm referring to was in German though, so I would encourage you guys to go look it up.
So this is a question for everyone, kind of broad general thing for sleep specifically. So like there's all these handheld monitors or things that you can tag into a pillow. And I guess it's more based upon a persistent heart rate / lack of movement, I guess, of accelerated armor. You guys have any opinions on like a more viable product out there for the consumer market than not, or something like that, or do you think they're all like, nah?
I use one of them.
Well, so have I, and that's the thing, is like, so how accurate is that?
I don't think it's very accurate. So the one that I have, I put my phone next to my bed and it like listens to me or something, which is kind of creepy. But it like listens for movement, which I'm sure is messed up. Like I have 2 animals, and one of them's a cat that runs around like a psycho. I'm sure that messes up my sleep. But the other in the ICU, and when they send the kids home, they give them like the
actigraph, I can't say the word.
Actigraph.
Actigraph, yeah, they, so that's a little bit better, because it's actually attached to your body and measuring your actual movement.
What is that available for consumers as well?
I have
a
Yeah, like
you
a,
have
like a Fitbit.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
no, so like,
Some of
so
those will do it, and if they're actually attached to your body, I mean, I haven't done the study, but like, if they're actually attached to your body, I think those are a lot more accurate, where like, the ones that are like an app on your phone, there's just so much like.
Yeah.
But
I have
one
ones that are
that's like a
actually-
headband, it's like an EEG, and it's like $50, I
That's a
think.
thing.
And yeah, and you wear, I mean, you have to wear a headband, so if you are uncomfortable with that while you're sleeping, like sometimes I would take it off. But it seemed pretty accurate because I like would monitor like caffeine intake, like how, you know, like did it actually affect my sleep? And I know that like you can see in the graphs, like if I drank caffeine after 3 o'clock, I felt like I was sleeping, but the sleep wasn't very restored. I didn't go like deep and.
Did it give you traces or just like?
No, not really
steps?
traces, just steps, yeah.
Like I wanna see them.
Yeah, I don't
That
know, I don't know how accurate it is, but it seems more accurate than the Fitbit.
I will say that I haven't read any studies about the accuracy of what you were describing, but the like the Actigraph and Fitbit and all those, and the app that listens to you, from what I read, they're about 50% accurate at best. So I mean, you can flip a coin, and I would imagine that even with the one you're talking about, the majority of these are most accurate looking at your REM sleep, because REM sleep is when so for my fellow neuro people, there's a inhibition of the ventral root of your spinal cord during REM sleep, so you don't move at all.
You're paralyzed.
Yeah, so you can be dreaming about, you know, you're fighting someone on a pirate ship, but
You have normal sleep.
you're laying there
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
normal. You can't actually move at all. So that's when it's easiest to pick up if you're in REM sleep, because you're not moving. Whereas, you know, with the other parts of sleep, you're moving around a little bit, and the machine doesn't know if you're just laying on the couch watching TV. But I would say for the REM sleep part, that's probably the most accurate.
And there are questions on the accuracy of the one I'm talking about too, especially if the like electrodes aren't, if you don't keep replacing them and things.
Yeah, there's very few electrodes to begin with.
I have a question about sleep too. I was wondering if there's any changes in it, because you guys were talking about neuroinflammation and like glia and things. Does that change while you're sleeping? Because I thought I saw a study that said like you get more extracellular matrix, like the volume increases. So I don't know if the glia is related to that.
Yeah, so the glia, the microglia become more active during that phase to help. So the extracellular space kind of expands so that some of the toxins, some microglia will eat the toxins, but also so that those toxins can leave the brain naturally, sort of like a filter going through the blood-brain barrier. So things like amyloid beta, which is one of the proteins with Alzheimer's and all these nasty things, can be drained out during sleep. And when we wake up, that extracellular space goes back to normal. Your glia stop moving quite as much, mostly microglia. Your astrocytes, which are another kind of glia, don't move quite as much as your microglia.
I thought it was the astrocytes shrinking back when you fall asleep to make the space and then they move back in, or is that been debunked? Because
They're kind of like astrocytes. I'm like neurons, and then I came to Hopkins and it was like microglia, and I forget about astrocytes a lot. But they do move a little bit, but they don't move. Like microglia will actually like move around in the space, but the astrocytes will. I mean, I guess they would potentially shrink back. I mean, this whole like extracellular matrix thing is a really recent paper.
Yeah.
I think it just came out in
2014.
fall.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I guess it was when I first started. So
Like, yeah, both the Greek philosophers, like in their beginning of their paper, you know, like we've been talking about this since Aristotle.
Yeah. That's true. We're still like doing nothing. That's ridiculous.
Maybe we can take one more and then hear the results of the, yeah. Or unless we don't have any more.
Wait, why not? Okay, so yeah, when you are young and you have disrupted sleep, if it's not necessarily tied to like a medical condition, you can reverse if you have a more sleep supportive environment. You are seeing that in your studies, because I know your graph in particular showed that, you know, over time it did deteriorate. But would you say you are reading anything about, you know, improved sleep habits, you know, even though they may have had severely disrupted patterns as a child, supporting, you know,
That's
new
the
growth.
research that I'm doing. There isn't much research on it. It's sort of one of the things that we're trying to figure out. So for my studies, which I didn't really get into very much, is the animals that I fragment are healthy. We don't do anything to them. They're not sick. And we're seeing these long-term changes. But in sick individuals, the other question is it further inhibiting that? So my next step in my research is to look at, hey, if you mess up your sleep, does that make you more vulnerable if you get infected later in life? So does that make you more vulnerable for Parkinson's, or does that make you more vulnerable if you have the flu? Does your brain react differently than if you had good sleep as a child? Because there's this whole second hit hypothesis that happens, where it's, oh, well, if you prime the microglia, so they've been reacted to bacteria or sleep fragmentation apparently, does that, they are more likely to react more aggressively to an insult the second time around. And it could be because there's some low level inflammation that never goes away.
So I'll sort of piggyback to that too. I can't recall exactly who wrote it, but I did read a paper a few years ago showing that in children who had a fragmented, like severely fragmented night of sleep, the night after they received the vaccine, they had about half as many antibodies produced as a child who had a great night of sleep. So you can do the math yourself over time what would happen.
And that's been replicated in adults as well. There's like prime time vaccine giving time periods during the day. Also, you're more likely to get sick if you're exposed to like a bacteria during a certain part of your sleep cycle. Or not sleep cycle, but like during the day.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really.
I feel like we could talk to you guys all day long. But here, we all realize we need to get some sleep.
Sleep? What's that?
Are you sure? Probably, yeah. Let's be nerdy about it. All right. So let's go with most creative. So we actually do this in third, second, and first. So that we have different, with as many categories. So third for most creative was Samson. Ta-da! And second for the most creative talk was Elizabeth. Sorry. Thank you. And first place was Amanda. All right, so this is best communicated. So the best communicator in third place was Elizabeth. Second place was Sarah. And very first was Amanda again. Thank you all, seriously. Absolutely wonderful and very interesting research you were doing, and you're going to continue to do, right? So most of you are grad students and postdocs, is that right? Okay, wonderful.
So keep getting out there and talking to the public about what you're doing. It's really, really important to do.
Incredibly. And I would love, I think in the future, I'd like to grow this Science Slam thing to be more of a workshop style, so you learn, maybe even you guys could, give tips to fellow grad students, postdocs, and other people that want to come, citizen science, people that want to talk, because it's a really difficult thing, but it's so important. And of course, with being able to do the science communication, you have to, like you said, there's only a certain percentage of people that are going to step up to it. All the rest of the scientists have good stories and are really interested and very passionate about their work, but they just, they need that extra confidence. What better way of giving them confidence is showing them how to do it, right? So we should think about doing that in the future. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This is again.